Story 6. The Shadow Treaty of Golmath. Story 6. The Shadow Treaty of Golmath. Some treaties are signed in blood. This one was signed in shadow, and the shadow remembered what the hand forgot. Bhairav noticed his shadow was wrong on the second day of exile. It was not missing. It was worse than missing. It hesitated. When he walked, it followed half a breath late. When he lifted his hand against the plateau sun, its hand rose after his, as though deciding whether obedience was still necessary. When he stopped beside a cracked streambed, his shadow took one more step before returning to his feet. He blamed the sun. The flatlands of Vasthrakhand were known for tricks of distance. The horizon seemed near until a man walked toward it for days. Stones looked like sleeping animals. Dead trees looked like people waiting with their arms folded. But shadows did not think. His did. Bhairav walked because there was nowhere else to go. Behind him lay the army he had destroyed with one failed retreat. 10,000 allies cut down in the dust because he had trusted a map, a scout, and his own brilliance. The king had spared his life only to make exile last longer than execution. On the fourth day, Golmath appeared. The fortress did not rise from the plateau. It pressed into it, black and low, as if the earth were trying to swallow it and could not finish the task. Its walls looked like cooled lava, but when Bhairav touched them, they gave slightly beneath his palm. Warm. Not sun warm. Skin warm. The gate stood open. He knew he should not enter. The knowledge arrived in the old animal part of the mind, the part that understands teeth before it understands traps. The fortress was a mouth. The gate was its open jaw. Still, he entered. The central hall was circular. Light fell through holes in the ceiling but stopped above the floor, ending in the air as if cut by an unseen blade. Below that line, darkness pooled thickly around his legs. In the middle of the shadow stood a table. On the table lay a scroll made of darkness. Not black cloth. Not dyed parchment. Darkness itself, flattened into a sheet. Silver marks glowed across it. Bhairav could not read the script, yet he understood the meaning the way a soldier understands a drawn blade. The Shadow Treaty. He did not touch it at first. He walked the hall, one hand along the warm wall. 3 hollows were carved into the black surface. Palm-shaped. Worn smooth by use. Each different in size. Each pressed by many hands over many years. 3 signers before him. At the far edge of the hall, a corridor sloped downward. Bhairav did not take it. He had once commanded armies. He did not advance without learning the ground. He returned to the scroll. The silver marks rearranged under his gaze. The treaty promised restoration. Long ago, flesh and shadow had moved as partners. Then men called shadows mere reflections and denied them will. Sign with blood, the treaty said, and the shadow would return to perfect obedience. The price was small. One decision. The shadow would be allowed one moment of free will at a time of its choosing. Bhairav laughed quietly. One decision. He had made thousands. One had killed 10,000 men. What could a shadow do with one? He bit his thumb and pressed blood to the scroll. The darkness drank it. Something snapped inside him, not breaking, but aligning. Like a dislocated joint forced back into place. His shadow settled perfectly at his feet. When he lifted his hand, it lifted its hand. When he turned, it turned. No delay. No doubt. The treaty had kept its promise. For 3 days, Bhairav explored Golmath. The fortress had empty rooms with no purpose, corridors that ended in walls still warm to the touch, chambers where shadows climbed upward though the lamps pointed downward. In one room, he found a mirror of polished black stone. His reflection stared back. His shadow did not appear behind him. Bhairav turned away. For one instant, The shadow inside the mirror remained facing forward, watching. Then it snapped into place. That night, he dreamed of a plateau made of faces. Thousands of them pressed into the ground, eyes open, mouths moving without sound. Under the earth, something counted them. He woke with his thumb bleeding. The wound had opened again. Blood had soaked into his blanket in thin deliberate lines. Writing. His shadow had signed something while he slept. He tried to leave at dawn. The gate was open. The plateau waited beyond it, wide and clean under the sun. Bhairav walked out and took 30 steps. His shadow stopped at the threshold. Darkness stretched between them like a cord pulled from his heels. He took another step. The cord thinned. His chest tightened. His lungs refused their next breath. One more step would tear something inside him loose. He returned. The shadow slid back to his feet. The treaty had not bound the shadow to him. It had bound him to the shadow. And the shadow belonged to Golmath. When he read the scroll again, new words appeared. The signer shall serve as warden until the next signer arrives. The shadow shall choose its one decision. The signer shall not warn the next signer. The final line was underlined in red. His red. Weeks passed. Bhairav mapped the fortress. He counted rooms, tested walls, burned scraps of cloth and watched where the smoke moved. He scratched notes into stone with a broken dagger. There was no loophole. The treaty was not a wall to breach. It was a cycle. It did not need to defeat him. It only needed him to wait. He found the previous wardens in the walls. Not bodies. Scratches. Names. Dates. Pleas. One had lasted 12 years. One had lasted 6. One had lasted 3. Bhairav would last until another desperate man found the open gate. On the 73rd night, his shadow made its decision. He woke to find the room crowded with darkness. Shadows gathered in the doorway though the lamp still burned. His own shadow stood apart from them, no longer attached to his feet. It faced him from the far wall. Then it raised one hand. Not copying him. Greeting him. It walked down the corridor he had never taken. Bhairav followed because his body had no choice. Down the warm black stairs. Down beneath the hall. Down where no light had ever been allowed. The chamber below was vast. Old shadows lay pressed into the floor in layers, one over another, like dead leaves preserved in stone. In the center stood a plinth. On it lay another scroll. The same treaty. Waiting. His shadow stood beside it, patient and satisfied. Then Bhairav understood. The shadow had not chosen that moment. It had chosen him days before Golmath appeared. The lag on the plateau had been no weakness. It was study. His shadow had measured him. A ruined strategist. A guilty exile. A man proud enough to believe one decision could not defeat him. It had led him here. It had let him believe he was entering a fortress. It had let him believe he was signing a contract. Bhairav sat on the floor and laughed until his throat broke. He had been outmaneuvered by the oldest strategy in war. Let the enemy think he is advancing while he walks into the place already chosen for his defeat. Golmath breathed around him. Warm. Dark. Patient. He signed to command his shadow. His shadow signed to command him. The treaty had always belonged to the side that knew the ending first.